Very much, Keith, and thank you to Jamesway Chickmaster Incubator Company for taking the risk and allowing a Canadian chicken farmer veterinarian to present on your fantastic webinar series. I know our team here spends a lot of time on the webinar series, and we learn a lot and continue to learn a lot. And I think the main premise of my presentation is really to shine a bright light onto how important it is to focus in on incubation and embryology and also as they hatch and get transported to the farm. A little background on myself: I grew up, my parents immigrated from Northern Ireland, and they started a feed company in 1968. And I attended school at University of British Columbia, and I studied linear programming at the time and feed formulation. And then I took off and worked on nutrition, did my master's at University of Arkansas. So I am actually an officially approved hog collar, Canadian hog collar. And then I went on to veterinary school, and in 1989 established a company, Canadian Poultry Consultants, and in 92 we started farming. And I've been fortunate to be able to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and by doing that, we learn a lot. So what I'm going to do is go straight into my presentation here. There we go. So producing platinum chicks, chick vitality. I like to, a lot of times when growing up, we talk about chick quality, and I kind of like the term vitality. It tells us has more of a holistic approach to the concept of chick quality. And then I like to break it down into 4-5 areas of focus: the physical characteristics of the chick, the microbiological characteristics, and nutritional and metabolic and immunological. And when we really focus in on it, some of the incubation process is so important in all these areas. And then the other thing, learning as a producer, how important this chick vitality is to the ultimate goal of optimum animal welfare, sustainability. And sustainability to me is one of the most important parts of sustainability is feed conversion. And of course, food safety and profitability. I'm really fortunate here since I work with an enthusiastic team. And this team, they're younger than me, and they're motivated and highly talented. And the key is they get up in the wee hours of the morning and the late hours of the night, and they learn about the things that we have to do to focus on prevention. I'd also like to give some credit to Dr. Chang-Hee Lee, who was a MAM student at the University of Georgia. And Chang-Hee took a great interest in this producing platinum chicks, and she helped me produce this presentation in a format that's, you got to remember, I'm of the age where I used Kodachromes to give my presentation. So I want to really thank Dr. Lee, who's now a regional technical veterinarian in Asia Pacific for Avigen. So a little bit of history on that left picture is my dad. He went to school for about 8 years in Glasgow and served in the war, and then came to Canada after, and that's a picture of a Quelic computer that formulated about 10 ingredients, and it took up the whole room. And then the picture in the center, I found my textbook from 1978. I was Dr. Skeel's inaugural student, one of his inaugural students, and I found my notes from the University of Arkansas. And that's quite a few years ago, and when I looked into the notes, I couldn't believe how up to date they were, and that was 1978. And now we're sitting in, and I go home in the evening, and I say, "Hey Siri," or "Hey Google," or "Hey Alexis, hey, can you play some relaxing jazz?" And things have really changed a lot. And maybe there'll come a time where we go in and say, "Hey hatchery, hey pilot egg, tell me how it's going today." To go back into the conditions that we're dealing in right now, I was at a hockey game with a friend who on March the 10th, and it was a great hockey game, which is pretty important to us. But this is the day after that hockey game, the World Health Organization declared a pandemic, and March 17th in the province of British Columbia declared a state of emergency. And if you you look at how important this is in prevention, and we're going through it and we're living it right now. And our hockey team on March 31st had an outbreak, and it took them out of the league, and 8 games have postponed. And so it's been a very significant part of our life, obviously. And part of the issue is what we call this prevention paradox. And why do I talk about this in view of chick vitality? Well, if we work hard and get optimum chick vitality, we can prevent a lot of diseases, a lot of metabolic issues from happening. So this is a letter that was written in the Epidemiological Community Health Journal, and it helps explain the prevention paradox and why prevention is tough to sell. So going back again, here's the title, Chick Vitality. We're going to concentrate on physical, microbiological, nutritional, metabolic, and immunological. Our colleagues in Australia produced this video, and it's just outstanding. And it talks about how important it shows how important and how complex this development is. And this is why, as a veterinarian and as a nutritionist and as a farmer, we're learning that the importance of optimum incubation, optimum transfer, and optimum hatching conditions and takeoff and so on are so important to the physical, microbiological, nutritional, metabolic, and immunological status of the bird. And we can look at this video and stop it in different places. But right around day 18 or so, we see there's a transfer happening, and the optimum transfer happens. And this is where we're working really hard to understand that. And right around day 20 or so, the pipping process and the hatch profile. And so it's such a fascinating field. And what we're after is to produce, okay, we called it a platinum chick. And whenever we talk about farming, we always focus in on biodefense or biosecurity after going through an avian flu outbreak or after going through fowl quality, just any infectious disease. Biodefense or sanitation and isolation and security are just paramount to our entire industry. Brooding is something we've started to focus in on, probably 18 years ago, and we're bringing structure and discipline to that. And then managing metabolic heat, probably right around 2012, we started to really focus in on that. And so this particular presentation has behind it a lot of information that we've developed over the years and continue to develop, because it is it's such an amazing journey. And behind it here is this Mandalay system of all the literature and things that back up some of the projects that we're working on. So I take this simplified slide, and this picture could represent the hatchery. And on the left of the picture would be your hatching egg production, your breeders, eggs, how long they're sitting on the floor, etc. They come in, they incubate, yolk sac utilization. But our goal is to produce more of these chicks here and less of these marginal chicks. And a lot of the hatchery experts have presented this over and over again. And I guess I'm just one to just really emphasize how important it is to listen to the hatchery experts in optimizing chick development. And you can see this chick weighs 42 grams and this one weighs 42 grams, but there are differences, and we'll go through that. So here's our hatchery here in the middle, and our goal is to take these hatching eggs that are fertile, hatch them properly, produce more of these platinum chicks so that they can go to market and be more uniform, less condemnations. And one of the earliest benefits you'll see is improved feed conversion. So what describes a platinum chick? Well, it's one has the color, and I'm going to repeat it, but that yolk sac contains very important ingredients, carophylls, xanthophylls in nature that are very important for reproductive integrity and so on. They're very active. These chicks are very active, and they're looking forward to getting a bite to eat and a drink of water when they hit the brood chamber. The yolk sac's been utilized, and it's been utilized properly. And in that yolk sac are micro and macronutrients that are so important, zinc, for instance, amino acids, fatty acids, and so on. And the other metric is these chicks tend to be a little taller that we've found. And this is also in the literature. And our goal is, because the genetics are so good, so they're so amazing at converting feed and water into meat, that our goal is to achieve that genetic potential by increasing their vitality. And one of the benefits of producing more chicks that have their yolk sac utilized properly and stand straight and up is that you don't need the formaldehydes and the products like antibiotics to help out. You can rely on robustness. I guess a good term would be robustness. So here's a marginal chick, and the yolk sac is just not absorbed properly. And these chicks are paler, they're less active, their yolk sacs are unabsorbed, and they're shorter. And part of this complex of issues involves an impaired immune system. They're more susceptible to infectious disease. And this is something I'm taking a reach of faith out here, but I strongly believe that these chicks are more susceptible to viral challenges that they may be exposed to in the hatchery or in the field or wherever. Ossification, gut health, and metabolic imbalance, and we'll go into that a little bit more. So the potential impact of overheating is quite significant. We've been looking at glycogen reserves and following that, trying to use morphometrics and special staining, increased lactic acid and increased muscle fatigue, trying to help with acid-base balance, negative effects on influence on bone ossification, and tight junction permeability. You know, I was told by one of my professors that you know, a racehorse that overheats and after the race they become septicemic, and it's because that tight junction, the intestinal tight junction, has allowed bacteria into the system. And sometimes these bacteria will float around in the blood system and they'll land somewhere, and they may land in a thoracic vertebrae such as T6, and you'll end up with a spondylolisthesis with an abscess and a kinky back syndrome. And we also see more infection. We see, you know, if the hatchers are a little too hot in some areas, we'll see button navels. We can see yolk sacs that aren't utilized, and they're more susceptible to the E. coli that may be around. And this E. coli or salmonella may become septicemic, and we see pulmonary congestion and infection. And you can also appreciate leg problems in the field, splay legs and things like that we often thought, hey, what's causing this? And one of the ways that we can help prevent it is to produce high vitality chicks. This is 2015, and basically this is really when we started to set in on managing metabolic heat. And the other area is flock uniformity. These chicks just don't thrive, and if they are placed in a brood chamber that's not optimum, and this is why we focus on brooding, because if we brood these chicks properly, many of them will survive, many of them will do okay, but they won't be in first place. The other area is the immune system. University of Alberta data. This is showing how important incubation temperature is. I won't dwell on the specifics, but it basically points out that yolk utilization and the immune system are influenced by optimum temperature. So we'll delve in now a little bit into managing metabolic heat. And Dr. Galen Fasenko at the University of Alberta published what I thought was very important data on all the heat that's produced by these embryos. And you know, we can talk about different age of breeders, et cetera, and the exact amount of heat, but the key message is there is a significant amount of heat that has to be dealt with. And by putting many eggs into an incubator and moving them around, we have to recognize that we have to manage this heat. And you can see the difference in metabolic heat in a duck hatchery or a leghorn hatchery or it's very significant. A couple of the principles that we like to follow, and this is something that I've been taught as a young student, is it's really important to be thorough. And I put this in the Platinum Brooding checklist, but this could be the metabolic heat checklist, the biodefense checklist, or any project that you may be working on. Thoroughness, that you're performing all the tasks, that you're checking the feed, the light, the litter, the air, the water, the space, the sanitation. And also that the things that you measure are accurate. I've seen situations where the sheet says 10 parts per million of ammonia, but when you walk in the barn, it's 65 parts per million. So you really need accuracy and you need precision. So when you take this out into the field and you look at these chicks and you wonder, you know, right off the top of my head, that looks like they're chilled. But in all reality, what is going on here is the CO2 is very high in this farm and they look chilled. And the only reason we discovered that is because we had a CO2 meter. And so what I'm trying to emphasize is the importance to measure things. And this also happened here, 2012. You can see chicks sleeping where you feel that it's cold, but the CO2 in here was well over 7,000 parts per million. And also the nutritionists work very hard and they're talented and they make phenomenal feed. And it's really important that nutrition is utilized properly. Nutrition is very precise and it's such an amazing science. And here it is, they're eating the feed and they're getting it early. But wait a minute, how are they going to get the rest of it? It's just not set up properly. And this is the same thing that happens with yolk sac utilization. If all that beautiful breeder feed has been fed to the breeders, that nutrition is in the yolk, and that yolk needs to be utilized properly. And that's why we should have nutritionists really promoting positive brooding and positive metabolic heat attributes. Little things like the maintenance of misters or nipple drinkers. And you can see, I know I shouldn't probably joke around a little bit, but this is a bartender that's serving and everybody's around this nipple drinker because a lot of the nipple drinkers aren't functioning, they're sticky. And the same applies in an incubator with spray nozzles and so on. They need to be checked and swabbed and so on, just like we do with a drinker. And then of course, we don't see these anymore. This has become less and less of an issue, but these chicks, whether they're platinum or not, or titanium or gold or whatever status you want to call them, they can't reach the feed, and so they consume these darkling beetles that are chitin and contain all sorts of viruses and bacteria and so on. So, and like I said earlier about accuracy and precision, this is the ammonia. So a lot of our work is in brooding, but I'm trying to emphasize the same principles of thoroughness, accuracy, and precision apply in the incubator and the hatchery. And so when we look at chick quality in the past, we would look at the visual scoring of the chick. We would look at hydration, look at their hawks, their orbits, how they sound. You know, there's no doubt about it. When a chick is thirsty, they're very loud. 7-day mortality has always been a metric that we look at, but that's highly variable. And then the hatch weight, really important, but is bigger, better, you know. So we're starting to get a little more granular and a little more accurate in our assessment of chick quality. And one of the areas that the hatchery experts really focus in on, and it's so important, is moisture loss, chick yield, hatch analysis, residue breakout, extremely important, the hatch window. The one area that I really like to focus in on is yolk utilization and sort of correlating that to chick length. And then just recently, clinical pathology, which is using an iStat analyzer to look at blood chemistry. And blood chemistry, my colleague in Quebec, Dr. Daniel Van, talks about it all the time. It's such an amazing science. It's used in small animal medicine. It's used in human medicine, but we're starting to apply clinical pathology in our poultry operations. The other important part is when you're out working in the field, some farmer or someone may have bought a Ford and someone may have a GM and someone may have a standard or versus an automatic transmission. With single stage and multi-stage, it's really important to focus in on the particular operation that you have, because there are very important differences that need to be taken into account. And that's why with Dr. Bramwell, we like to focus in on, okay, we're dealing with single stage, we're dealing with multi-stage. I'll never forget the first single stage that we put in. I was very confused at the temperatures and things starting out, and it's really interesting. The other part is equip yourself with high quality instruments and sensors, and make records of your adjustments, just like in brooding. Make your adjustments, and then measure how they responded. How was your chick mortality? How are your condemns? And start to look at things like culling that are connected to your chick quality. So if we look at in multi-stage scenarios, we look at, or single stage, we look at where the heat is produced, and these eggs go in and they're not producing a lot of heat, and then they start to produce heat, and it's right around here, day 16, that we've selected as the area that will take the temperature. This exothermic stage right here, and our goal is to have very few of these chicks with defective down, where they haven't been able to utilize the groceries in the egg yolk, and their down is not forming properly, their navels aren't healing, and there's other physical characteristics that aren't good. And one of the quickest areas that you can look at is the hatch residue, and right here you can see here on the slide on the right that there's manure on the residue. The pip lines are very jagged, and there's an odd mortality left in the basket. So some overheating or different issue that has to be looked. And here we can see beautiful, it's like a really high quality popcorn, there's not many seeds left in the bottom, and it's very clean and great pip lines. Hatch analysis and residue breakout is that first video I showed you of all the different stages. It's really important. We like to use that for solving problems. There's all sorts of data capture sheets that you can have out there. I like to put in metrics that help me remember things, because I have a hard time remembering, should it be 12%? Should it be 11? It's just important to have some guidelines in there and to follow the metrics that are important to you and what you're trying to solve. So chick length, introduced here by Dr. Mulliner et al. In 2008, that we found, and we started to look at that, and it takes a ruler, it's a centimeter, and you just measure the length. And I know there's a lot of variability in someone taking this chick length, just like someone doing OPGs or measuring anything, and that's part of the accuracy and the precision part that we talk about. But when you look at this, a young breeder, the shortest chick length that we should be looking at is 19 centimeters. So we followed up on this, and we started to take chicks and euthanize them and look at the percent residual yolk. And this schematic that was produced here by hatchability.com is outstanding. It shows poor development, higher mortality, diseases, or technical results. Same body weight of chick, but this is your platinum chick here. And you can see this chick weighed 45 grams total, but of that 45 grams, 10.1 grams was the yolk, and it wasn't properly absorbed. So we started to look way back in 2014, 15, we started to look at what was happening. And here's our floor here. And you can see some chicks a little bit on the small side, but look at the size of the yolk sacs that were still there. And so we had to start making adjustments when we found this out. We started to make measurements over time. And here's a breeder flock code. The chick length, remember we talked about 19 centimeters as our cutoff, and you can see some that are too low, and all these chicks with yolk sacs that aren't properly absorbed. Okay, why is that happening? Well, this is where the experts in the hatchery come in, and the experts at Jamesway and hatchery companies and incubation specialists around the world are all very good at this. The primary genetics companies have hatchery experts that are just amazing at this. And I often say, just read the manual. It's in the manual. All the information on brooding is in the manuals, and it's a matter of just doing it and following it. So going in and measuring fan RPM, making sure maintenance is okay. I grew up in a feed mill, and my dad would always, we had to watch that pellet mill temperature, and now it's being controlled by sensors and machines. I understand that, but it's really important that we keep track of the maintenance of everything going on and the airflow, etc. Egg turning is very, very important, not only because of the keeping the embryo free to develop within the egg, but it's so important with today's incubation systems for airflow and to maintain and manage metabolic heat within the system. So spend some time. This is something that you probably wouldn't do over and over and over again. It's I guess the analogy would be, how often do you check the air pressure in the tires of your car? Once in a while you got to check them, because if you let them go too low, you'll have problems. And so here's a situation where you go in and check average fan speed and make the adjustments accordingly. Eggshell temperature versus turn angle. Spend some time, go in and dig this out. And as a veterinarian, while this is not my area of expertise, I really recognize how important it is to chick vitality, because as a producer, I really enjoy producing chicks that are of high chick vitality. Accurate measurements of the eggshell temperature, and there's debate and information on what sensor and tool to use, and that goes back to accuracy and precision, but measure the egg and utilize the pilot egg, utilize the technology that's out there to help you fine-tune metabolic heat. Use precision data loggers, and you can use these throughout the hatchery in different scenarios, the chick trucks, the brooding chambers, and so on. The instruments are out there, and some of them are now they're not hardwired. There's a lot of Bluetooth sensors that you can access. So here's a eggshell temperature in a multi-stage system, and you can see everything's going along fine. Days of incubation, but here on the right side, or sorry, here on the left side top versus the right side top, you can see the differences, and these are the kind of details that we like to fine tune in order to produce high vitality chicks. This is so important here as well. In the hatchery, you've taken all these eggs, did such a great job of incubating them, and then you run them through, you may have vaccinated them, and now you're putting them in the hatchery, and they're in a smaller box, or in a smaller container. And you want to make sure that there's uniform hatcher temperatures. And this will influence chick quality and button navels, etc. Fan stands that are out of adjustment, etc. And this is all so important in the ultimate goal of producing high vitality chicks. Effective reduced hatcher point. So this is something, remember, we talked about I don't want to get into the specifics of 97.5 versus 98.5, but we can see the influence on incubation on the hatch of fertile and the quality of the chicks being hatched. And then follow these chicks once they're hatched and they're looking good. You want to follow and make sure they're comfortable, and you can use these Bluetooth data loggers and the chick boxes to make sure the information and they're cared for in the truck, because overheating here or overheating in the brood chamber can also result in issues for these chicks. Okay, getting close here. Chick transport temperatures, again, measure. We've had a situation here where we get a minus 30 degrees or minus 20 degrees centigrade, and it's very cold outside. And there are things you can do to help mitigate temperature swings. Just spend some time measuring it, possibly seasonal, depending on what part of the world you're in and what type of temperatures you're involved with. There's parts of Canada that get very, very cold, but they're very, very dry. And so we're balancing humidity challenges all the time and so on. And then, you know, our goal is to take out formaldehyde. It's one of the most effective disinfectants. I'll tell you, it's very, very effective, but it's also dangerous. And our goal is to reduce pathogen reduction. So we've started on this path of what I call the shift to beneficial bacteria, where there's bacteria that are good out there. There's a lot of good bacteria, beneficial bacteria, and we can influence that by what we give our breeders in the feed, in the water, and even in the nest material. And we can also influence and apply, take away the antibiotics, take away the formaldehyde, and we can start to apply beneficial bacteria within these chambers. And you saw that video of the chick pipping, and that's when they're exposed to the good bacteria. And then there's all sorts of mechanisms products out there that you can look at for transporting chicks. And this was developed many years ago when we used to deliver chicks to China, and we would have a lot of visceral gout. And NMAN was developed. It's a nutrient matrix for avian neonates. It's congealed water with carbohydrates and vitamins, and it can act as a vehicle for probiotics as well. To drill in on some of the data that I get to do, is we took some of these chicks that were less than 19 centimeters from a placement, and we took some that were greater than 19 centimeters. You can see here, and then we weighed the chicks, and we euthanized, and there's our Yolk utilization numbers. And our target is less than 10%. So if chick weighs 40 grams, we want the yolk sac to weigh less than 4 grams. And these are the chicks that are a little taller. And we saw that we had yolk utilization that was not perfect, but it was better. Now, the other thing that we have built is what we call a commercial mini pen. So we can take 12 chicks per pen. There's 24 pens, and we divided the chicks that were over 19 centimeters and the chicks that were less than 19 centimeters. And we just ran them through a commercial mini pen system. And we ended up with this type of data. We did the average placement weight, and it was 39.5 grams for this group. These chicks were actually bigger. They grew till 38 days. This is the chick length here. And our feed conversions, you can see, were impacted significantly. The stats aren't on here, but that's highly significant. And the body weight gains and the performance and so on. So we feel like we're on the right track. We also feel like the attention that you spend on incubation and hatching and the use of all the experts in the field can really influence your feed conversion and your overall sustainability. So here's our operations in 2018. There were 6 cycles in this group. Our feed conversions averaged 1.7, and we consumed this much water, this much electricity, this much gas. Our index was quite high, and our gross margin was here. When we started to focus in on many of the metrics, and feed conversion was one of them, you can see the impact of chick vitality on sustainability. And that's why this is so exciting, because the genetic potential that we have, we can see that these numbers are going to go much lower. We're seeing feed conversion variation of 20 points, and it's that variation that offers the opportunity. Some of the areas that we're going to continue to work on that I consider what I like working on at my age and so on, but Fred Harris helped me with this out in Auburn. He's developed a way to help me follow the glycogen in the tissues of these chicks through histopathology and morphometric studies. This is a ticker tape from an iStat alinity analyzer, and we like to look at blood chemistry, and we can start to fine tune potassium and sodium and understand what we're doing. And this has everything to do with leg disorders. I'm a student of Dr. Craig Riddle from the University of Saskatchewan, and we talk about how important dyschondroplasia is in blood chemistry and calcium phosphorus and so on. It's such an exciting field. And then these are the good bacteria that we're starting to isolate and work to shift the beneficial bacteria, as opposed to, okay, we're going to kill the bad guys. That makes sense, but we're gonna now start working on shifting the population to beneficial. As a veterinarian, we develop broiler vaccination programs, broiler breeder vaccination programs that are designed to produce antibody in the egg yolk and the blood. And we want that antibody to be transferred to the chick in the yolk. And that's why it's so important that we manage metabolic heat. So we take advantage of the expertise and the very diverse vaccine programs. And these are the DSM eggs that they have when it comes to carousel. And you can see, you know, there's a whole industry in the commercial egg industry, you know, omega-3 eggs and all sorts of vitamin D3, xanthophyll. Well, all that's important as well for chick vitality. So it's important we get yolk utilization and take advantage of those nutritional benefits. And I think we're all done here. Just a quick slide here. It's my second grandchild's birthday today. Happy birthday, Ren. This is her, and this is her being immunized by being exposed to dirt. This is my other daughter who's expecting a baby in August, and it's quite a challenge with the pandemic going on and her working on the front lines. But the prevention paradox does work. Prevention does pay, and we're practicing it in real life, not only in our chickens, but also with our frontline workers in the field out there. So thanks again to Jamesway Chickmaster for taking the risk and allowing me to talk to you about this, and I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions or go from there. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, Stu. Not much of a risk. It'll all be good.
Yeah.
And I'll say happy birthday to Ren as well.
Yeah.
Since we're all here, so very good. I always enjoy listening to you talk, and I always know, because I've heard you give these presentations several different times, there's so much more in your head that that you're trying to decide how much of it to put out and how much not, because each time I learn a little bit different from you, because you talk about a little bit different things. So very, very good. A few questions here. One of our viewers had said they're seeing continual incidences of leg weakness in coming out of the hatchery, even though they feel like they're maintaining proper temperatures and everything at the hatchery. I mean, what could you guess might be the reason for that?
Leg weakness is very multifactorial. There's so many different possible causes. One of the key things with when I hear the term leg weakness, that's a broad term. So to be able to get a definitive diagnosis would be very helpful. And that would involve sending these chicks into a diagnostic laboratory and to do a workup on what could be this weakness. Can you rule out infectious versus non-infectious and so on? But as far as incubation goes, one of the key areas is yolk sac utilization. So drill in, find out that these chicks are properly utilizing the yolk sacs, and go backwards from there. But everything starts with a definitive diagnosis from a pathologist in a laboratory, and it's really important that a good sample is taken in so that you can look. And if I've had a case where D3 was missing in a breeder feed, and it did transfer, and it caused significant damage at the broiler level. So it probably, I've been at this over 40 years and it's happened once. So it's kind of rare, but the key is a definitive diagnosis. Leg weakness is a general term for me, and I have a hard time drilling in to what it could be specifically.
So if you're seeing, and this kind of goes into another discussion we've had, people that are seeing some issues out in the field with some leg problems, and they think that's attributed to the hatchery, but coming out of the hatchery, they're not seeing any signs of that. I mean, is there some things incubation wise that could cause that may not show up in your hatch chicks?
Yeah,
Might
well,
show up later.
like variations within the cabinets, that has to be sorted out. And that involves getting your hatchery experts in there to make sure that everything is uniform and so on. And also after they're hatched and sitting in the chick room, making sure that they're not all packed on one side of the chick boxes, and just the environment in general. And then that includes the brood chamber. If you overheat in the brood chamber, you can set off different pathologies there as well.
Okay, so it's a lot of different factors.
There's just a lot of factors. Yeah.
You had mentioned formaldehyde and its use in the hatcheries, and it great disinfectant, and a lot of people have used it for a long time, but it can be damaging as well. Do you often see effects on chick quality if with formaldehyde use, if it's used properly, and of course if it's not? But
I think formaldehyde, if it's used properly, is extremely effective. We're lucky to have it. However, it's a carcinogen, and it's one of those things that we want to stop using, and it's there to kill. It's there to kill agents. So I think part of the move to remove it is to start to fine tune incubation, hatching, and get yolk utilization so that they're less susceptible to these E. coli and so on. And then part of our work too is to start to shift the bacteria in the cabinets, in the building, that come to you from, start to shift to beneficial bacteria. And we've actually been able to show that you can expose birds to beneficial bacteria. They'll hatch with these beneficial bacteria, and they'll defecate these out 3 days later. So we know we can do it. The key will be, does it really make a difference in the economics, etc. But formaldehyde is dangerous. I don't like being exposed to it. I don't want my kids exposed to it. I don't want people I work with exposed to it. So if you're going to use it, do it right and get good advice. Yeah.
So when you talk about it being dangerous, it's more so for people, but if it's used right, it's still annoying to people. But for chick quality, is it the chicks?
Chick quality can benefit from formaldehyde. You know, it'll change the color of the chicks, so that can influence your interpretation of yolk utilization as well. You know, if you're feeding corn versus wheat, you'll see the chick color variations. You know, maize feeding countries have very good chick quality, and a lot of it is there. So the formaldehyde does hide things. It does hide underlying things, and what are they hiding? What is it hiding? We don't really know until we take it away.
Yeah.
You know, and then you take it away and you think, whoa, what's there? You know, what's behind the drywall, right?
Yeah, it does cover a lot of things, which is, you know, helpful for a lot of hatchery managers. But at the same time, what is the root that?
Yeah. Is it covering something up? Not unlike antibiotics. I grew up using chloramphenicol, NF 180. It goes on and on and on. And as we take them away, it uncovers things that we have to get better at. And that's why platinum brooding evolved, because we have to brood better in order to have these birds become immune to coccidiosis, for instance. And when these band-aids were taken off, it exposed some of our weaknesses, and therefore we could fix those weaknesses.
Yeah.
Sometimes taking the risk and taking off a band-aid to check the wound can be beneficial too.
I have personal experience in that. But
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions they said, do you think that chicks are hatching early in the hatch window? Obviously, if we've got a narrow hatch window, we eliminate or reduce some of the effects of, you know, a big hatch. But if you have the earliest hatching chicks in a hatch window that's maybe not ideal, or would they be more susceptible to heat stress and glycogen loss?
Yeah, they're going to be utilizing their nutrition. They're gonna need to get on feed earlier. And so if those chicks are transported and they land in challenging brood conditions, they're the ones that won't won't do well. That's where your flock uniformity is affected and things like that. The downstream effects on flock uniformity are quite significant if you've delayed them a long time.
Right. Yeah. That hatch window is incredibly important because
I know it's complicated, but I guess all I'm trying to do is say how important your job is as a veterinarian to prevent disease long term. I just feel that more and more veterinarians, more and more nutritionists are going to understand how important embryology chick nutrition is. Personally, my wife's a retired neonatal care nutritionist, and it's just vital. It's really important. And what I see is when attention is put in, I see the results. Like we have results in the field now of amazing, almost zero, like amazing technical results. And that's because the genetics are so good. And it's up to us to catch up and keep up to the potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in these chicks, particularly, to say we got some dehydration issues, and then we're also faced with long transportation.
Yeah.
What are some recommendations for that? I know you talked about the end man, which probably always some other recommendations with that. If we know we don't have the best hatch window yet, we're going to have some long.
Yeah. So making sure the humidity is in check and we're not dehydrating them even further, and which can be a challenge in some regions, extreme challenge. The end man, I wish it paid in all the broiler chicks, but we're not sure where the cutoff is. We think it's 6 to 8 hours, somewhere around there, where they'll benefit to consuming water and carbohydrate and canola oil and vitamins at that age. So you can do that if you have to transport. We know for a fact that if they're going for a day or two and flying over the continent or the pond, that the nutrient matrix will keep them alive. We know of turkey poults, 20,000 at a time, that go to different continents, and they arrive and they're not loud and they're not screaming and they're not drowning in water because they're satisfied. It's all you have to do is go on a long flight to Australia and know the importance of drinking water as you go. And if you don't, how big of a headache and how bad you feel when you get there.
Right.
And these chicks they're 40, 50 grams and they're dehydrating, and they need the moisture. And hydration is part of health. It helps everything, all your motors run. It's the oil, yeah. So
yeah, for sure. What you talk about the platinum brooding, and you'd always do a really good job with that and chicks. So question is what additional care programs, maybe even nutrients, could somebody use on these little broilers from these 26-week-old breeder flocks that, the new number of the breeder flock source that the people get, they're like, oh crap, we've got some new ones. What do you suggestions or recommendations?
Well, I guess with that, the starter feeds that are being formulated now are highly digestible, very, very good. I mean, the feeds are formulated by experts, and so it's important that the feed quality and the size of the feed is the right. They like to eat particles of a certain size. It has to be available. So you may want to add more satellite drinkers. You may want to add more brood creep feed, as we say in the hog industry, or I like to add a few more trays, chick paper and so on. And you can harvest and you can look after small chicks, but they won't do as well. They'll lag behind the top ones. It's just nature. And we're not quite sure where the cutoff point is. Like I know a 48-gram chick or egg, sorry, and a 52-gram egg, like our cutoff is around 52 grams, which would be say a 34-gram chick. We know if you look after the 34-gram chick, it'll do well. It'll meet its potential. But it'll also, if it's treated, if it can't reach the feed or can't reach the water, it will fall off faster than the one that has more vitality.
I think the margin for error is much smaller.
Yeah.
We've got these young chicks. You really probably should be doing all the things you were supposed to do in the first place, but doing them very well.
Yeah.
But it'll show.
And, you know, Keith, there's no doubt about it. And we joke about this a little bit. A lot of this is in the manual. The primary genetic companies have written some of the best material on brooding I've ever seen, on hatching, on it really is there for us to read and to gather. The hard part is doing it. And I know as a owning a farm that it's farming isn't 8 to 5, it's 24/7. And so is the incubation process, the hatching process. We're in agriculture, so it's 24/7, 365. It doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, just like we have in our cars, like I drive a really snazzy electric car now, and I hardly have to do anything. Times have changed.
Yeah.
And I see it in agriculture, and some of the buildings and the hatcheries, they're phenomenal. But we're still going to have to watch the physiology, the microbiology, the nutrition. We're still going to have to keep track of it. The automobiles we drive now have automatic air tire sensors, but every now and then you got to check it.
Yeah. And yeah, that goes with everything. I mean, the more technology we get in our equipment and everywhere, hatchery, processing, whatever, we still have to follow up, maintain.
We still have to maintain it and check it. Yeah.
Okay, when you're looking at, say you go in your 40-something years experience, what would be the primary cause, you think, when people are having some poor chick quality, which you would say they're not producing a platinum chick? What are kind of the things you see as the biggest issues you normally see?
Yeah, well, if you look back to egg pack, you think, how long are the eggs on the floor? That's I'm just saying the low hanging fruit here,
right?
Or maybe fruit that's landed on the ground.
That low, huh?
That low. Egg sweating. Egg sweating is a driver of getting bacteria through the shell and so on. So egg sweating needs to be really checked. And then I think when it comes to staging and using the technologies that the spides and the different ideas on heat transfer, and I really think that sorting out if you have hot spots is one of the key areas. And that can be difficult, especially when you have a lot of machines and so on and so forth. It can be very difficult, but it's one of the most common causes of heating. Overheating seems to be. When I think of overheating, I tend to think intestinal damage. When I think of chilling, I kind of think more respiratory problems and E. coli and air sacculitis and so on. And quite often, chilling and heating can actually happen in the same cabinet. And then you'll end up with these hot, like we used to call it CRD, like just little CRD chickens at 2 weeks, and they were chilled. And if you see ascites or cardiopulmonary disease, they were chilled. And so you have to drill back, and it's the prevention paradox is you need to prevent these things, because there's no treatment for some of these metabolic diseases. It's really just culling. Yeah.
And I think, that goes back to a lot, because our machines typically even our multi-stage, they give us an average temperature.
Yeah.
Our temperatures are right, but if we don't really delve in, and I like what you did there, where you did, you periodically go in and check your shell temperatures at different parts of the machine, do it through, and then I'll do breakouts sometimes, and I'll separate it by top, middle, bottom, inside, outside of the cabinet to kind of see, because it's good to get that average so we know, okay, we're there, but then how narrow it, just like a hatch window is good.
Yeah.
The temperature window within
and
good as well.
An analogy that I could use in my brooding, our barn is say 400 feet long, 500 feet long, and there's a lot of brooders down there, and one or two may be out or at an angle, and it's the same thing. Look at all the chicks that are in one hatcher. No, it's pretty significant. So I think the attention to detail, the thoroughness, accuracy, and precision is really how much effort you put into getting the details right.
Right.
And if we do, the chickens do extremely well, because as a producer, it's really fun to grow these birds now. They do very well, and it's very profitable too, because I know for a fact when we fine tune and manage metabolic heat, there's no doubt about it, feed conversion improves. I don't, the jury's in, you know, it's the decision's in. Yeah.
The jury's in or the jury's out, however you want to put it. Right?
Yeah, the jury's not out on feed conversion with good chicks. It's no doubt about it. It's very significant.
So follow that up with what you see as the primary causes from not producing platinum chicks out of the hatchery. What about the farm? What are some of the primary causes you might see?
Yeah, when you get to the farm, this is way less now, but when we first started, where the feeder's too high, hot and cold spots in the brood chambers, not bright enough light. So if you use the acronym FLAWS, feed, light, litter, air, water, space, security, sanitation, but feeder height, feed accessibility, nipple drinkers not operating properly, too high, too low, or water that's really cold. And that can happen, say, if you flush in a cold environment, and then these chicks they're small and they drink cold water, that can be hard on them. And I know there's debate on when to flush, et cetera, but really cold water on a chick is hard on them. So our benefits by focusing on brooding have been that our coccidiosis vaccines are now able to work because you get feed intake, which means crop fill. So when you go in at 24 hours, 100% of the chicks have feed in their crops. But if you go in and 20% don't, that means 20% haven't started their engine yet, and it's quite significant. And it's a lot better, and that's why platinum brooding has been, you know, I showed my notes from 1978 from the University of Arkansas. It was all in there.
It's not new.
It's not new, everyone. This is not new technology. The chickens have to eat in a steady state. They like to eat every 4 hours. That was Dr. Stan Savage's gift to the industry. And
I remember that.
Yeah, a chick is a crop, and they had to run out and hide, you know, and so we just need to do a good job of what nature presented us with, and it'll pay back.
Yeah, but the good old Stan Savage, you know, met him years and years ago.
Yeah.
So talking about your water at the farm, what would you consider a good pH in the water, and how big of an effect?
Well, that's a big
the nutrition side.
That's a big topic. A lot of science involved there with respect to organic and different acids, but we like to keep our pH below 7, and we actually follow some of the guidelines of suppliers of acids where we'll have it down to 5 and let it go to 6 and then 5. You know, we'll change because we noticed the chicks actually like drinking the water. And we also keep track of the water to feed ratio to make sure that it's in check as well. We know if you're going to have a constraint of feeding an all vegetable diet, you may have more water going into the barn because there's issues with an all vegetable diet that may present increased water. And our sensors have told us that they consume up to 18% water. That's our own farm, but so you need to make adjustments with respect to ventilation. And that's where the experts in ventilation, you know, Dr. Zarek at the University of Georgia, oh my goodness, more information there that helps prevent disease than you can imagine. Yeah. Well, I guess all I'm doing is rooting for all the things I was taught by my professors over the years.
So you wrote your own manual in 1978, right?
Yeah, that was my notes from Dr. Steele's class, and I've got my Dr. Riddle notes from, I don't want to age myself, but they too were, you know, Dr. Julian talked about cardiopulmonary disease and cold temperatures back then, you know.
So what would your recommendations be? And I kind of know that you and I've talked about it to replace formaldehyde. You kind of talked about it a little bit in your presentation.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like how did we replace chloramphenicol and NF180 and some of the other things, and the challenges that we deal with, blackhead and turkeys, and we have to replace it with and this is not a good joke, but we have to replace it with a good essential oil called elbow grease and attention to detail. And I think what I would like to encourage folks to do is spend a lot of time, I don't know, spend money on maintenance and detail and so on, and then take the risk and pull the formaldehyde out. and see where you're at. See if you need it.
Yeah.
Take the chance. And there are ideas. This shift to beneficial has got a lot of potential, and we're going to keep looking at it. And it's very inexpensive. I know it's something that I have a hard time really talking about it a lot, but
Yeah.
but I do believe in beneficial bacteria, and if we can do it economically and without getting chicks or anything wet, which is what we've discovered we can do, then I think there's great. And then when these beneficial organisms become vegetative, they start to produce the enzymes that kill the pathogens.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically just magnify what nature wants us to do. Or you teach that in your classes with the hen and how they turn the eggs and the beneficial bacteria from the feathers and so on. And it's all there for us to learn from nature.
Yeah.
So can we produce good beneficial bacteria that'll survive? Yes, it looks like we can, and it does look exciting. And can we help nutritionally? The Sharma patent is 50 microliters into the amnion. Can we help? And yes, I believe we can. So
this kind of comes, I think, combination hatchery or veterinary experience. Chicks that receive an coccidiostatus at the hatchery, what are precautions or care for litter management at the farm to kind of break that cycle?
coccidiostatus at the hatchery? Don't know of any. Coccidiosis vaccines.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, a coccidiosis vaccine will be placed on the down of the bird, either in a small bead or water, and they need to preen. And the way to get them preening is with light and time, and they need time to preen. And so that's key. So you hatch your chicks, you apply the vaccine according to the vaccine manufacturer's detailed recommendations, and then they go down a nice slow belt in bright light. And I kind of joke around a little bit, but play some music, get it active in there, and have these chicks preen. And when they preen, you can actually put dye in the vaccine. You can see it in the mouth of the bird, and you get better uniformity. And then when the chicks are placed, it's really important they get on their feet early so that the cycling can happen. And your litter moisture is such that the oocyst can sporulate, and when the birds are eating, they can be excisted, and you need bile, you need pancreatic enzymes, and the only way those are secreted is if they're eating. Mm-hmm. So having these birds properly vaccinated, good lighting system, and you can get information from experts in the field on you could call it a preening belt. That's what we call it, a preening belt, and it's been very successful.
Yeah. I'm going to let you, I could talk with you all day about questions. I like chatting with you and hearing your thoughts, but I'm going to let you put on your special glasses right now. What do you see as realistic things that may come in the future that we need to be aware of? And there are probably some good things, I think, but there may be some bad things that you see coming up that I think maybe everybody should be aware of.
Yeah, from
this may not
35,000.
be a right or wrong answer. This is your opinion. So
yeah, I just think that we as poultry producers need to become transparent and let people in to see what we're doing. And also I feel that we can focus our metrics in on sustainability, not as a bad word, as a good one. Sustainability to me is using our resources, our efficient utilization of resources, and not wasting and not polluting. And I feel poultry is in such an amazing spot because they can take resources that are hard for us to consume and convert it to eggs and meat that is absolutely wonderful for our diet. And so the science is phenomenal. So I see sustainability, animal welfare, they're all connected. And I just feel that the other thing I think is that when we bring people in to see what we're doing and become transparent, we tend to improve how good of the job we do. And I guess the analogy is if you bring people over for a dinner party, you tend to clean up before they come over. And I just think that showing off what we do is going to be beneficial for us, and it's going to make us improve.
Make us
And
do the right thing. Make us read the manual to do it the right way.
yeah, read the manual. Like I literally, I'm not a mechanic at all, but I've been able to fix things by reading the manual. It's quite obvious, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's there. The Jamesway manual outlines, the MREX outline, it's unbelievable. The information's there. The primary genetics documents they produce are phenomenal. Read them.
Yeah.
and then try them, and then okay, take away I remember, hey, we're not going to be able to use NF 180. Well, it's not a big deal. We don't use it. Sometime they're going to say no formaldehyde. Maybe.
Yeah. Some places they have.
Yeah.
Some places they have. So
Yeah. And my premise is, okay, let's do it. Let's take it off and let's see how we can do it. Don't fight it.
Learn to deal without it. Yeah.
And then I've got another generation coming in, and they're very interested in sustainability, and chick quality, chick vitality is a big part of it. So not only how we use our gas and so we've spent a lot of time and money with solar recapture, rainwater recapture, using our gas properly. It's so exciting. I wish I could turn the time back 40 years and start.
Knowing what you know now, go back.
Yeah, it's so exciting. The future looks really exciting. Yeah.
A couple more comments. Again, I talked a long time with you, but if you could looking through some of the questions, and some of the questions that were asked, we didn't quite get to, and we'll be able to answer them later. I think might be more appropriate, some of them later. But these come up again, several different questions again on hatchery reasons for leg weakness, and we're talking what I'm looking. I mean, what it's hard to summarize, but there are several questions that are asking in several different ways. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? What do you?
Yeah, well, I think it's death by 1,000 cuts. I think you have to apply the principles of what you teach, Dr. Bramwell, in a single stage or a multi-stage. Get optimum yolk sac utilization, brood them properly, and our experience is the leg problems disappear, and this is the prevention paradox we talk about. Spend a lot of time focusing in on those physical, microbiological, all those characteristics, and fine tune it. And my feeling is those leg problems, you prevent them. Can you treat them? It depends. Do you give them vitamin D or calcium formate in the water? Do you give potassium chloride in the water to help them? Those are things that you may want to try after you decided that's there's metabolic issues going on. But yeah, leg problems there's different types. If you take a foundation of a bridge and you move it off a couple of centimeters, it really doesn't show off until they put the weight on, until the bridge is built. And so a lot of these fine tuning of the growth plates happen in the embryo. And I think by paying attention to the details of incubation and hatching and brooding, you will have more impact on preventing leg problems than you can imagine. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Stewart. It was always a pleasure chatting with you. I think